Is your maiden name Levante?
It is.
And Ms. Brooks, at some point, were you married to Mark Jensen?
Yes.
And do you see Mark Jensen in the courtroom today?
Yes.
And can you just point to him and describe something that he's wearing?
He's over there in a suit and tie.
Right, there's only one individual over there in a suit and tie. That's the individual right there?
Yes.
All right, it's been identified.
So, Ms. Brooks, I want you to think back to approximately 1997. During that time period, did you join the firm Stiefel Nicholas?
Yes.
And do you know when about you started working for that firm?
I believe it was in February.
So you think February of 97?
Yes.
And where were you working? Like where physically were you?
I was in St. Louis at the corporate office.
And so this firm, Stiefel Nicholas, it is headquartered in St. Louis?
Yes.
And that is where you were working?
Yes.
And what was your job position?
I was administrative assistant to the retail brokerage president.
Okay. And
yeah. Sorry.
And so someone who worked at the headquarters of the firm.
Yeah.
And was he like a boss to other brokers at the firm?
Yeah. Yeah. All the brokers reported to him.
And what was this person's name?
Scott McKay.
And so during this time period, was Stiefel Nicholas, was it expanding, opening offices?
Yes, they were. We had a new president and CEO of the entire company come in, and he was big on expanding it.
And given your job with Scott McKay, did you help with the opening of new offices?
I did.
And so did you end up coming to Wisconsin several times to open offices?
Yes.
Now, when do you recall first meeting the defendant, Mark Jensen?
I believe I originally met him around April of '98.
And do you recall the context, how you met him?
He was one of the brokers that was being recruited to open an office up in the Racine, Wisconsin area.
So where were you when you met him? Do you recall?
I was in the corporate headquarters. They flew him out to St. Louis to meet with people there.
And Mr. Jensen was involved in a new office being opened, correct?
That is correct.
And were you one of the people who helped open that office?
Yes.
Where was that office?
It was in Racine.
Do you recall when it opened?
I want to say a couple months later, May, June, somewhere in there of '98.
Okay, so we're talking May or June of 1998 when the Racine office opened?
Somewhere around there, yes.
And so did you actually come to Wisconsin?
Yes.
And during that time period, did you meet Mark Jensen again?
Yes.
After that time period, let's say over the summer of 1998, did you ever communicate with Mark Jensen in any way?
Yes. Yes.
And how would you communicate with him?
There would be phone calls back and forth for various work things. And I believe I went out and he opened the office. I think there were 3 of them that came over then. And then there was another 1, maybe 2 that came over later. And I went out and helped bring those people on as well.
Now, over the course of this interaction with the defendant, did you learn that he was married?
Yes.
And did you learn that he had children?
Yes.
And as far as you were aware, he was still living in the same household with his wife and children?
Yes.
Did you ever meet Julie Jensen before her death?
No.
So during this time period, the summer of 1998, what was your relationship status?
I was engaged.
And who is the person you were engaged to?
Mark Greenman.
Mark Agreement, you said?
Mark Greenman, yes.
Was that a fairly long-term relationship?
Yes. We had been seeing each other on and off for several years.
And you didn't have any children, though.
No.
So as you continued communicating with the defendant, did you develop a romantic relationship with them?
Yes.
Do you recall the first time that you and the defendant had sexual relations of any sort?
It would have been, I believe, around September.
September of 1998?
Yes.
And do you recall where?
I think St. Louis.
Now, leading up to that point, had you been flirtatious with him?
Yes.
Now, I'm going to show you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 21. So looking at that exhibit, can you tell us what it is?
It looks like email messages between me and Mark.
Now, at some point during the course of this case, did you learn that police had obtained email messages between yourself and the defendant?
I'm sorry, can you state the first part?
At some point during the course of this case, did you learn that police had obtained email messages between yourself and the defendant?
Yes.
And so State's Exhibit 21, what you're looking at here, would those be the email messages that you learned were obtained by the police?
Yes.
So fair to say it's not every email you ever sent to the defendant during this time period?
That is correct.
So State's Exhibit 21 is the physical exhibit. I would like to display on the screen State's Exhibit 20, and this would be the file labeled emails.
It's about to get real interesting. They start digging in relationships in your past when it's this type of case.
Now, Ms. Brooks, we're obviously talking about something that is quite a long time ago, 1998. And so I'm going to ask you some questions about these email messages during that time period.
Okay.
Now, can you see the screen and see whether that matches the exhibit that is in front of you?
But it looks similar.
So if I zoom in a bit and you look at the top of your exhibit.
Yes. Oh, okay. All right. Perfect.
But for your purposes, you can look at the paper exhibit.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to go down. Do you see how these emails are in a thread?
Yes.
And so is it actually the oldest email that is at the bottom of the page?
Right. The oldest is at the bottom?
So when we're talking about the thread,
yes.
The one that is the older is at the bottom, and then you work your way up
right
to get to the replies and,
right.
and so forth. Okay. All right. So now looking at the first page of the exhibit in front of you, you see an email between yourself and the defendant from September 3rd of 1998 at the time on your email says 6:58 a.m.
Yes.
Now, typically, would you be emailing so early?
No.
So do you believe that this time period is not correct?
That is correct. Yes, that would be wrong.
All right. And so this email that we're looking at from you to the defendant, it says, "Thanks again for yesterday. What a wonderful idea you had and a wonderful time we had." Do you have any idea what you were referring to?
Not specifically, no.
Okay. So would this refer to a time when the defendant was in St. Louis with you?
Yes.
And then
yes.
do you recall anything else about that now that you've looked at it?
No.
All right, so now the following line begins with the letters IDLY.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
What do those letters stand for?
I do love you.
All right, so then that line would be I do love you even more now, but no surprise, you are too wonderful for words.
Yes.
And then XO, talk to you soon, correct?
Yes.
What does XO stand for?
Hug and kiss.
So by this time, you are at least talking flirtatiously with
Correct. Yes.
and you make some reference to having seen him.
Yes.
All right. Now just moving up the page, do we see his reply to you? Thursday, September 3rd, 1998, 10:04 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. And so in that reply, he says, thank you. Wish I hadn't been so tired, so little sleep the previous nights. Was great just hanging out. Definitely lucky. Got a few looks and question about being in St. Louis. Cute, all covered. Then Ron called. It was all about Columbus. Just funny the way it flowed. Hey, came in this morning and my blinds were up, and I do like those knobs. IDLY, cheers. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So he uses the same phrase with you, I do love you.
Yes.
And then moving up to the next email, this is your reply to him. And again, so your reply says 8:09 a.m., but that time doesn't make sense with his 10:04 a.m. email.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
And so do you believe your replies were earlier than when you were actually replying?
I think the timestamp states earlier.
The timestamp
Yeah.
earlier?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then going up to the top, if we look at this email from the defendant to you, this is 2:44 p.m. the same day. What does he say there in that email?
Wouldn't mind knobs on my blinds, would prefer cheeks on my desk. Cheers. Did you smile?
So he's flirting with you.
Yes.
And then at the very top of your reply, what do you say in your reply?
If you continue to be a good boy, maybe you'll get what you wish for. I would enjoy participating. Yes, I smiled. I always smile when talking with you.
Okay, so you're receptive to the flirting.
Yes.
All right, so moving on to the next page of the document that you have in front of you. And again, to get to the beginning of the email chain, we have to actually go pretty far down. So if you look at your exhibit at page 3 at the bottom, for this particular email chain from September 4th of 1998, it then begins at the bottom of page 3, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it starts with questions about lunch plans.
Right.
All right, so now moving up. You see this email in the middle of the page from September 4th, 1998, 11:15 a.m.
Yes.
The defendant says to you, know what I'd rather eat, and
Yes.
then there's certain symbols.
Yes.
Okay, what is he saying?
He's making a sexual connotation.
And that's oral sex.
Yes.
When you initially had your first sexual relations with the defendant, was it oral sex?
Yes.
And was it one or both of you who performed oral sex?
Both.
She keeping it real.
All right, and then moving up, through the pages. Sometimes when you were communicating with the defendant, would
He ate that
you
monkey.
complain to each
He ate
other
that monkey.
about your current significant others?
Yes.
So he would complain to you about his wife,
Yes.
and would you complain to him about your fiance?
Yes.
And so if you look at the bottom of page 2, this email from September 4th at 11:34 a.m., it reads, "Yep, lover's nuts thing going on here. My own fault. Turned it down last night after I came in because I was pissed. She knew it. Dutiful thing. Right now, dutiful would do. Nah, cheers." And then it continues, "Thinking about my desk right now. Now that's a way to enjoy lunch." Is that accurate?
Yes.
And so is he complaining about his wife in that when he calls her dutiful thing?
Yes.
And then looking now, this would be page 2, and this is the email from September 4th at 11:49 a.m. And it reads, "Got pissed last night because of her attitude in spa. She knew I was when I got out. I sat out on the deck for hours. When I came in finally, I just reversed the don't touch me thing." So is that again another complaint about his wife?
Yes.
Would he complain to you about sexual issues with his wife?
Yes.
All right, now at the very top here, your final reply in this chain, what do you say here at the top of page 2?
Did we miss the window of opportunity? I meant with our significant others, not each other.
Okay, so at that point, your perception was that the window of opportunity was completely open with the defendant.
I'm not sure what I meant there, quite honestly. Because it says I meant with our significant others, not each other. Oh, okay, yes. I see what you're saying now. Yeah, that there was a window of opportunity for us. Yes.
And maybe you missed it with the people that you were currently with.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like I'm saying. Yes.
Now, if you just turn quickly to page 4 and take a look at that, what that email is. Is this email just essentially about stocks?
Yes.
Now, turning to page 5, does that begin another email thread?
Yes.
And so if we want to get to the beginning of that thread, is that at the bottom of page 6?
Yes.
So way off to the side here. This is an email from you, also on September 4th, to the defendant. And you're asking him, what kind of music do you prefer to listen to when being romantic? Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you and he have a few emails exchanged back and forth on that topic. He replies to you about what music.
Yes.
And then you tell him, work with me here.
Yes.
All right, and then he suggests that thing you do or reggae.
Yes.
Okay, is that thing you do an actual song?
Yes.
All right, and so then along that same chain, if you go to page 5 and go to the email from September 4th of 1998 at 4:08 p.m., skipping past the beginning part of that email, does he say, I'm going to have to go home and try to fix my high maintenance woman. If I stopped and got Titanic on the way home, wonder if I could get her to sit next to me on the couch. Low expectations. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so along the same lines, he's once again complaining about his wife to you.
Yes.
All right. And then your response above, you are such an incredible man. I want one.
Yes.
And then he responds, thanks. You can have me.
Yes.
You call him a tease.
Yes.
He responds, who's teasing?
Yes.
And then your response is, I could get used to having you around.
Yes. Yes.
And so this is all on September 4th of 98.
Yes.
Now directing your attention, if you go to page 8, all right, so looking at this email, 9/4/98, 3:56 p.m., you're asking whether Midge gave him the message that you had called. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was Midge a secretary there in racing?
Yes. Yes.
So not only were you emailing with the defendant, you would also call him frequently.
Yes.
And did you have a cell phone at that time?
I did.
And would you call him on your cell phone?
Yes.
Would you call on work phones?
Yes.
So, for instance, this would have been a call to his work.
Yes.
But you wouldn't call him at home, would you?
No.
Now, at some point, did these calls become expensive?
The cell phone calls did. Yes.
And so, did he give you any money for that?
He did send me money to pay the bill once or twice.
Okay, so now moving down to page 9. This is, you see the very first email in this thread from September 9th of 1998 at 1:51 p.m.
Yes.
And then you talk about in this email to the defendant getting a massage tomorrow and then you the next day.
Yes.
So do you believe that there was some kind of meetup with the defendant sometime in the area of September 11th of 1998?
Yes.
And do you recall where that happened?
No. But I think it might have been in St. Louis.
Okay, so if we remember the earliest emails, it sounds like there was some kind of meetup in St. Louis early in September.
Yeah, I think that first one was he came into town for the day and we went to the zoo and just hung out. And then I'm not sure what this one was. Maybe a baseball game or something.
Do you remember around that time period going to a baseball game with the defendant?
Yes.
And was it in St. Louis?
Yes.
All right, and then the defendant in his follow-up email to you, September 9th, 1998, his reply is, you may sleep through the weekend, and then that date again.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And is that the one you testified to related to oral sex?
Yes.
And then you reply to him, you may be right. You ready for this?
Yes.
Okay, so again, you're receptive to this.
Yes.
Okay, so directing your attention to page 10. All right, looking towards the middle of that page, an email from you to the defendant, September 15th of 1998, 7:05 a.m. And again, when you look at that time, do you think that's too early for you to be on your work email?
Yes.
So during that time period, did you only access your email from the office?
Yes.
And do you have any idea how the defendant accessed his email?
He would either from work or from home.
Okay. So did you have knowledge that he could access his work email?
I want to go back to this. I said rich.
Following line begins with the letters IDLY
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
down.
Yeah, that there was a window of opportunity for us. Yes.
And maybe you missed it with the people that you were currently with.
Yeah.
All right. And so then along that same chain, if you go to page 5 and go to the email from September 4th of 1998 at 4:08 p.m., skipping past the beginning part of that email, does he say, I'm going to have to go home and try to fix my high maintenance woman. If I stopped and got Titanic on the way home, wonder if I could get her to sit next to me on the couch. Low expectations. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so along the same lines, he's once again complaining about his wife to you.
Yes.
Here it comes.
All right. And then your response above, you are such an incredible man. I want one.
Yes.
Said we rich, we rich, we rich.
And then he responds, thanks.
I gotta catch it.
Yes.
You call him a tease.
Yes.
He responds, who's teasing?
Yes.
And then your response is, I could get used to having you around.
Yeah.
It should be coming up.
So
I'm
this is
sorry.
all on September 4th of 98.
Yes.
I had to take it back that far. About to get it for you.
Now directing your
It's gonna
attention.
show a glimpse. It's gonna show a glimpse where in the email say we rich, we rich, we rich as she was scrolling.
If you go to page 8. All right, so looking at this email, 9/4/98, 3:56 p.m. You're asking whether Midge gave.
When she scroll, I'm gonna catch it. I'm gonna stop it where it say we rich, we rich. It's not in the. It's in the court because we saying it as it scroll, but I don't know what it really was. But I'm gonna stop it there.
The message that you had called.
Yes.
And was Midge a secretary there in Racine?
Yes. Yes.
So not only were you emailing with the defendant, you would also call him frequently.
Yes.
And did you have a cell phone at that time?
I did.
And would you call him on your cell phone?
Yes.
Would you call on work phones?
Yes.
So, for instance, this would have been a call to his work.
Yes.
But you wouldn't call him at home, would you?
No.
Now, at some point, did these calls become expensive?
The cell phone calls did, yes.
And so did he give you any money for that?
He did send me money to pay the bill. Once or twice.
Okay, so now moving down to page 9.
Here it comes.
This is, you see the very first email in this thread from September 9th of 1998 at 1:51 p.m.
Yes.
And then you talk about in this email to the defendant getting a massage tomorrow and then you the next day.
Yes.
So do you believe that there was some kind of meetup with the defendant sometime in the area of September 11th of 1998?
Sorry, I rewind it back this far.
Where
And I'm trying to catch it where it say, we rich, we rich, we rich.
No. But I think it might have been in St. Louis.
Okay, so if we remember the earliest emails, it sounds like there was some kind of meetup in St. Louis early in September.
Yeah, I think that first one was he came into town for the day and we went to the zoo and just hung out.
Now looking above that is his reply to you. That's September 15th, 1998 at 9:39 a.m. You see that?
Yes.
Now, can you read these middle lines here, beginning with the line that begins with drug? Okay, so directing your attention to page 10.
Femininity in the worst way. Yes, we're rich, we're rich. I wonder what she meant by that.
All right, looking towards the middle of that page, an email from you to the defendant, September 15th. I'll say Mark Freeman, right?
Yes. Actually, he was my husband by then.
Okay. So when did you marry Mark Freeman?
I believe September 19th of 98. Yes.
And so during this time period, why did you decide to marry Mark Freeman?
It had been an on again, off again thing for so long, and I guess, didn't have the courage to end it before moving forward with it.
Was he at his set?
Yeah.
And where did you go to get married to him?
We went to Tahoe via San Francisco.
And so it's true that in the midst of this month where you marry Mark Freeman, you are actively having an affair with him.
Yes.
All right, so now turning to page 13. Now, does this email begin with some jokes that you had sent to the defendant?
Yes.
So it's one of those joke emails?
Yes.
All right, and his response to that appears to be, I'm looking at kind of the middle of the page, Wednesday, September 30th, 1998, 2:05 p.m. His response to the joke email appears to be some type of joke, correct?
Yes.
And he makes a reference to Boy Scout.
Yes.
what was he referring to?
His penis.
So he calls his penis Boy Scout?
Yes.
And then your response to him, cute, not liking him very much right now, are you?
Yes.
And then he responds to you, yes, I am. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Like you. Cheers.
Yes. Yes.
So what was he saying with the yes, I am. No, I'm not? Do you know what he was referring to?
I think it was like a conversation between him and his penis. He says, yes, I am. And it says, no, I'm not. That kind of thing. Just kind of a back and forth there.
And then it says, like you.
I don't know.
Were you somewhat non-committal during this time?
Yes. Yes, I was.
Okay, because we're talking about the time period right after you got married and got
Mhm.
back.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so if we're trying to picture the timing, it's September 19th of 1998 that you got married,
Yes.
and you said you went out to Tahoe via California.
Yes.
And so you would have been gone out of the area of St. Louis for about how long?
It's about 8 to 10 days.
Okay, so maybe by sometime for sure before September 30th, you're back.
Yes.
Did the defendant know that you went to get married?
Yes.
Okay. Did that prevent him from pursuing you?
No.
Now moving to page 15. Now, in terms of the timing of these emails, so you see there's kind of like a big long email in the middle of the page there.
Mm-hmm.
And is that from the defendant to you?
Yes.
And then your response above that?
Yes.
So the timing of these emails, October 4th of 1998, and then your reply October 5th of 1998. What had happened right before these emails were sent? And I'm referring to early October of 98.
The opening of the Appleton office and the meeting that we had.
Okay, so beginning of October 1998, was there a new office opening for Stephen Nicholas?
Yes, it was the Appleton office.
And were you involved in going to Appleton to help open it?
Yes.
And was the defendant involved also in opening that office?
Yes, he was.
So this was a weekend?
Yes, over a weekend.
So a weekend when you and the defendant would be at a hotel with each other and seeing each other in person?
Yes.
Did that weekend, did you have sexual relations with the defendant?
Yes.
And so that particular weekend, did it go beyond oral?
Yes.
Just sexual intercourse?
Yes.
And so if we're seeing emails from after that time period, you can see references to that weekend. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Like, for instance, near the top of the defendant's email, it talks about up in Appleton.
Mm-hmm.
And he's referring to someone named Ed.
Yes.
All right, so I'm not going to have you read this whole chunk of text, but just going towards the bottom. If you read the last two lines of the big paragraph, the one that starts with "now that I can," you see that?
Yes.
Can you read that out loud?
Now that I can think and I'm not totally distracted by this cute creature that was there and had this ability to make everything else disappear.
And then how does he end this long email?
Idly and a true technical cheers to you, hoping you're okay with the tech thing.
Now, do you recall what he's talking about with the tech thing?
I think that was referring to technically having sex.
Would you agree that you and the defendant were somewhat distracted with each other during this office opening?
Yes.
Okay, and then you sent him a response. This is October 5th of 1998 at 3:28 p.m. You see that?
Yes.
And you're receptive to what he's talking about with the technical thing.
Yes.
And then you end with IDLY to you too.
Yes.
All right, so now I'd like to direct your attention. Do you see on page 16 how there's a long email string that starts?
Yes.
All right, so I'd like to direct your attention then to where that string would actually begin. So that would be page 18.
Okay.
All right, so this email string that we're talking about, it's referring to October 7th of 1998, correct?
Yes.
And then it just starts with good morning from you to the defendant.
Yes.
Now, at the very top of that page 18, you talk about having a bad night.
Yes.
And then his response to that, if you look on page 17 at the bottom of that page,
Mm-hmm.
he talks about giving you a call later or a call soon.
Yeah. Yes.
And so you would call each other throughout the day, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and when you follow up with the ensuing emails, you're talking about your bad night. If you look at that page 17, you're talking about drinking, going out drinking.
Yes.
All right, so now do you see the email that is from October 7th of 1998? That's 2:46 p.m. It's from the defendant to you, and it starts with must be slipping.
Yes.
Okay, and then he refers to you getting married. He was getting married with you.
Yes.
Okay, and now there's a few different letters that he ends the email with. We've already talked about the IDLY, but what's IWY?
I want you.
If you look at how these emails continue going to page 18 and moving towards the top of page 18, is it continuing with the back and forth flirtatious emails?
Page 18 or 17?
So I believe this is page 18. Just want to make sure. Oh, I'm sorry, page 16.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so you're continuing with the flirtatious emails with them.
Yes.
Okay. Now, early on in this email string, there was some reference to you writing a letter to him.
Yeah.
Did you sometimes write letters to him?
Yes.
And would you send those letters to his work or to his home?
Probably to his work.
Do you have any specific memory of this letter from the time period of October 7th of 1998?
No.
And would he ever write you letters or no?
I don't recall. Maybe.
All right, so now I'd like to direct your attention. There's another email string that begins on page 20.
What they call them, job wives and job husbands. They was getting
Where
it
the email
on.
string begins. And particularly, I want you to look at the one from Thursday, October 8th of 1998, 9:46 a.m.
Okay.
From the defendant to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in this email, do you see, he first of all asks you, so are you a roller ball or a pen kind of person? You see
Yes.
that? And then he asks you, what is your favorite color, fleece?
Yes.
And then he talks about fishing trips, Missouri, and fly fishing in Colorado. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was he a person who went fishing or did fishing?
Yes.
And fly fishing?
Yes.
Would he travel to do that?
I believe so. I believe he had.
All right. And then your response to that, you talk about, you're responding to the color of fleece and you talk about a deep green. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then apparently he talked about some interest in learning how to fly a plane.
Yes.
All that from the prior email.
Yeah.
And that would help get the fishing spot.
Yes.
All right, so now we are on page 19, the very bottom of page 19. And once again, this is an email from the defendant to you, October 8th of 1998, 10:44 a.m. You see the defendant making a reference to driving 10 hours to Big Cedar.
Yes.
What is he talking about?
Big Cedar Lodge in Missouri. It's the lodge on a lake.
And so essentially in this email, he's talking about flying and do something.
Yes.
And then he ends with, I really want you. Correct?
Yes.
I do love you. Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right. Now following up on his email string, do you see the email above that from you to the defendant?
Yes.
October 8th,